Welcome to episode 98 of the Sports Geek podcast. This week I catch up with Brooke Eaton from the Brooklyn Nets on balancing global versus local marketing.
Welcome to the Sports Geek podcast, the podcast built for sports digital and sports business professionals.
And now, here's your host who's currently checking his Snapchat, Sean Callanan.
Thank you very much, DJ Joel. Yes, I am trying to check my Snapchat more. I'm very much a big believer of using the tools. You can find me on Snapchat, Sean Callanan, SeanCallanan. And you are listening to the Sports Geek podcast, either on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, or Pocket Casts. I had former guest Todd Catflish ask me what's the best app for downloading and listening to podcasts, and I do send everybody to Pocket Casts. For me, it is my fave in as far as being able to download and decide when to download, and also set up specific lists around this is what I'm feeling like, whether it be a mood base, whether it's a sports or a business one, and also which ones have already been downloaded and those kind of things. So give that a go. As always, you can contact me via the email sean@sportsgeekhq.com if you have got a question, or you can send me a tweet at Sean Callanan or at SportsGeek. Will find me. I caught up with Brooke Eaton from the Brooklyn Nets, both at seat in San Francisco, but then also caught up when I was in New York post-seat. I was lucky enough to get a bit of a tour with herself and Mike Shear from the Brooklyn Nets of the Barclays Center. At that time, it was setting up for a boxing night, if I remember correctly. So I've got a few shots that will be included in the show notes. But it was good to catch up with Brooke now that I'm back in Melbourne, and talk a little bit more about her role as Director of Digital Media at the Brooklyn Nets and the Barclays Center. And so without any more pauses, Brooke Eaton from the Brooklyn Nets. Very happy to welcome Brooke Eaton, Director of Digital Media for the Brooklyn Nets and Barclays Center. Welcome to the Sports Geek podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
So first of all, tell us a little bit about your role and how long you've been with the Brooklyn Nets, because you only just started way back in January, but it must seem ages ago now.
It does sometimes feel like I've been here longer, but then again, there are days where I'm like, wow, those 7 months flew by. So I oversee all of our digital media here, and that is inclusive of Barclays Center, Brooklyn Nets, and New York Islanders, newly added, coming to Brooklyn very soon. And I oversee our websites, social media, email marketing, and our apps.
So yeah, you were just saying then that the New York Islanders are moving to Brooklyn to the Barclays Center starting this NHL season. So this is going to be, so last year it was just the Nets, and now it's going to be the Islanders and the Nets both hosting games out of the Barclays Center.
Yes, and we're so excited. The buzz has been great. We had a blue and white scrimmage with Islanders prospects here in July, and we sold out the arena, and it was awesome to see all of the blue and orange everywhere. And I think, it's going to be a great fit for Brooklyn. I'm really excited. So
starting back in January, like when we were getting a tour of the Barclays Center, you said you started just before the AllStar Weekend. Brooklyn hosted, New York hosted the AllStar Weekend, and parts of the events were at Barclays Center. What was that like? One, as a baptism of fire to begin with, but then what was the role of the teams that are hosting as part of an NBA AllStar Weekend?
Yep. So that was a fun foray into what it's like to work here. It was sort of trial by fire, just jump right on in. But, I was up to the challenge, coming from my background in the Olympics, putting on, big events around, tentpole sporting events, is something that I've loved doing. So it was very exciting. Obviously a huge opportunity for the arena and for the Nets to be sort of on the world stage. And the NBA is so innovative and brought so many ideas to the table that we had tons of digital activation around the arena, and of course a lot of press coming to look at all the technology we have and a lot of the sponsored activations that we were putting on, and then of course all of the incredible programming. So it was kind of a whirlwind for me, because I was learning about all of the different offerings that we have here in Brooklyn, while also speaking to them. So it was a challenge, but the team here had prepared so well, and I think all in all, people walked away from the arena at AllStar Weekend, very impressed with what they saw.
And one of the things, and I think it's something that you'll probably see with the Islanders coming to the Barclays Centre. Back when the Brooklyn Nets first moved, there was a massive rebrand and a lot of global marketing and got a lot of buzz for the rebrand. Whereas now, a couple of seasons in for the Nets, what's the mix now for you engaging the local community? Because you've still got to get Brooklyn behind the Nets, and now you've got to duplicate that again with the Islanders and sort of let the local community know more about their local teams.
Absolutely. I think this year, we have a huge opportunity on the net side. We have a ton of young players on the team, a lot of new faces. So, a lot of what I've been trying to do with my team is creating content around a lot of these players that sort of educates people about who they are and where they come from, and getting the message out there that we are really about youth on the team now, and growing together, and taking it's pretty much a clean slate for us. So I think for me, the strategy this summer has been getting my team out there and having them produce Q&As and articles, videos, slideshows, all kinds of things that then we can distribute across all of our different channels to really create some awareness about who the new 2015-16 Nets are. And then in terms of the Islanders, it's about identifying those hockey fans in Brooklyn while, of course, being respectful of all the fans on Long Island, and really trying to be as inclusive as possible of them, and having them come out to the arena and look at, all the different seats, and, making them feel comfortable with the transition as well.
And was there any specific, neighbourhood, really hyper-local campaign that you've been rolling out to really make that connection with the locals in Brooklyn?
So on the net side, we ran a massive neighborhood campaign that really picked up steam this summer. In June, we actually, everybody in the office here, in the front office, was sent out into Brooklyn, various neighborhoods, and we basically engaged with the community. We set up shop at local, shops around, coffee shops, things like that, and chatted with the community. We had the Brooklyn Nets dance team out with us. There were a few players at select locations where we were giving away, merchandise and prizes. And there was a social media component where if you tweeted out a photo of yourself displaying your Brooklyn Nets pride using hashtag BK Neighborhood, you were automatically entered to win a pair of season tickets for the 2015-16 season. So we tried to, create multiple touch points, between the experiential aspect of it, digital on web and social, as well as email. And then, of course, we did mailers and some other out-of-home activations as well. And, I think it was really meant to really establish ourselves further within the community and establish ourselves as, as a team that really cares and wants to be part of Brooklyn and get to know our neighbors essentially. And it was a huge success. I mean, the hashtag alone reached upwards of 30 million people this summer. People are still using the hashtag. We got some great submissions. So it was a great initiative.
I mean, I love it when you roll out those kind of campaigns and they have longevity. Like, it's really hard to get something started, but if the fans start owning it and, if it has that local feel like you've done with the BK neighbourhood, it's going to be something that's ongoing. So it's something you can tap into throughout the season. You don't need a specific campaign around it. You're sort of just training your fans to be, Brooklyn proud and those kind of things.
Absolutely. Brooklyn is it's such an awesome place to be, to live. It's huge. There are a ton of people here, and it's very diverse. So there are aspects of it where you feel like you're in a small town, but you're actually. I think there are you'd have to check this, but I think there are 2.2 million people in Brooklyn alone. So it's big, and we want to be a part of the conversation here for sure.
And I guess a real big part of that, and this is a unique part of your role in that you are looking over the digital and all things digital marketing around the teams, but then also the venue. Like working for, we work for teams and venues, and they're very much different focus and different needs, and sometimes competing. It must be good that you can integrate them. But what are some of the things that you do from a Barclays Centre point of view on digital that help promote the venue and also work hand in hand with the Nets and the Islanders?
Yeah, so I guess the way we look at it is from the Nets and the Islanders perspective. Everything we do on social is about, driving value for the fans who want to be closer to those teams. And from the arena perspective, it's more about utility when you're at the arena and, how the arena can add value if you are a local resident outside of the arena. So, for instance, with the apps, we have 3 different apps, obviously, one for the arena and then one for each team. And, one of the challenges I face is, what's the strategy between, a Barclays Center app versus a team app on a game night. And, really I try to focus any sort of in-arena messaging about, creating a better experience within the arena for the arena app versus the Nets app, which is going to be more about, your player stats and, complementary content to the game while the game is going on.
Well, that's the thing. You've got, the team apps have that high affinity and that they are fans of the team, whereas the arena app, like you said, it is a utility and you're trying to improve the experience. One of the things I'm sure it's something that you've been working on in the off season is, the Barclays Centre has a real look and feel for the Nets. The branding and the blacks and the greys and the whites are really prevalent. What are some of the things that Barclays Centre is going to do to bring a bit of that orange and blue, the colours of the Islanders to the arena? I mean, there's obviously a lot of things you can do with all the digital signage, but is there things in that space that you want to make sure that the Islander fans feel like it's their home as well?
Absolutely, 100%. And there are some things I think planned that hopefully will be exciting to Islanders fans and hockey fans in Brooklyn, but I don't think they've been announced yet. So I got to stay mum on some of those plans. But there are, of course, plans in the works to integrate the orange and blue, and make it more Islanders friendly.
Oh, well, we will stay tuned, and I'm sure you'll be sending out a few tweets and posts when those kind of things are announced. One thing I wanted to get your perspective on coming into both, the world of the NBA and now the world of the NHL is what it was like in your previous role working at NBC on the media side for the Olympic Games. I've been covering all things Sports Geek and Sports Digital for the last couple of Olympic Games in running Sports Geek, and the IOC's been a bit of one. When we're talking about the NBA being a leader, the IOC's been one that's been slow to move. Partly the fact they only have an event every 4 years makes it very hard for them to be up to speed. What was it like in that, I guess, that hyper pressure of that 14 to 18 days around the event from an Olympics point of view and trying to support the broadcast? Yeah,
so working on the Olympics is it's an incredible experience, and I feel so lucky to have been able to do it. I worked on 3 different games, and it's 17 days of just pedal to the metal, very, very little sleep, and making sure that you're prepared with your social media strategy long beforehand. So you're basically just executing, but of course being ready, for whatever gets thrown at you that you weren't able to anticipate. But, the main goals, obviously, for me at NBC, working on the social media team there for the Olympics, was driving tune-in, and, of course, being a good partner to the IOC, working with them, working with the USOC. But, yeah, the goal was tune-in, which is a different goal than selling tickets, which is the main goal now. So, it was certainly a transition when I moved over to working for an arena and working for a team. And there are differences with what you're able to do, but I think working on the Olympics definitely prepared me for a job where you're working on a nightly basis for a team, and it also prepared me for whatever sort of marketing and branding guidelines there are in future roles, because there are very strict guidelines when it comes to what you're allowed to do from a marketing and a digital social media standpoint around the Olympics. So in many ways, coming to the NBA and working for a team, I had a lot more autonomy in terms of what I was allowed to do, which was great.
And the thing is, because you don't have that, there's another event coming up, which is the Olympics. It's go, go, go. The ability to see something evolve and grow, it just doesn't happen in the Olympics, because the next day there's another big story and there's another big moment. But you're really just trying to add to that conversation and drive tune in. But it's a completely different focus now, with the Nets and the Islanders.
Yeah, I mean, we used to equate it to there's really nothing like the Olympics, but it's, almost like a movie premiere coming out, and you're building all this buzz via social media around a movie coming out, and then the movie comes out, and then it's over, and then you lose all that engagement. And that was always a challenge around the Olympics, because everybody's an Olympics fan every 2 years, for those 2.5 weeks that they're going on, and the challenge is to keep people engaged in the interim. And I think as social media and as digital channels have progressed, that's become a lot easier. But it's still most Olympic sports aren't among the most popular here in the United States. So there was always the challenge of keeping people engaged.
And I think also, I did see the guys at NBC present at the Second Screen Summit when I was there in New York. Yeah. That social, because digital is perfectly aligned for everything in the Olympics, because there's too much to show on the one TV screen. Yep. So as these extra streams start coming up, and you can watch these smaller sports or any event on a device, that's when social becomes so critical, because you need to remind and tell people with that tune-in message that you can access that sport that is your favourite sport, because it's like a collision of sports niches. What the Olympics is, if you are an archery fan, there's archery. If you are a hockey fan, there's hockey. Like there's every sport, and so, but not every sport can be served by the main, the main channel and the TV network. So that's where I think that's the huge opportunity from a digital point of view as the IOC moves forward to realise, and I guess media organisations as well realise that they can really cover an event like the Olympics with all these multiple channels.
And I think one of the biggest learnings coming out of the latest Olympics in Sochi, especially, we streamed on NBCOlympics.com. We streamed every sport, and I think one of the biggest fears was that it was going to cannibalize the broadcast, and in fact, it did the opposite. It boosted viewing across all the devices by having that programming accessible everywhere. I think the appetite is there, and people will consume it if it's available.
Yeah, and I think that's what's applicable going back to your role now. As you're pushing out more content, and everyone's pushing really hard into the video space. The appetite is there. It doesn't detract from the live event type of thing, but it shows that there's more appetite there.
Absolutely.
And so it's something for, I guess, leagues and things to see how they can potentially push it out in multiple ways. It does not. Yeah, digital and things like that won't cannibalize. It'll actually just deepen the relationship with the fans, so they end up consuming more.
Absolutely. And I think that there's, a time and a place for everything. And I think, one of the main focuses of my group here is creating content and creating experiences that, Nets and Islanders fans aren't going to be able to get anywhere else. And that's because we have the access. And so a lot of what I've been trying to do here is develop relationships internally that will allow us to be able to produce the kind of content that is going to deepen that affinity among our fans, and really provide them with value, both on, the unbranded side, but also with our partners, creating, experiences with them that, that fans want to be a part of.
And from a content and some of the platforms that you're using, obviously you're using all of the standard ones, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Mm-hmm. Some of the newer platforms. How are you finding platforms like Snapchat in terms of engagement, and how much your fans are I guess, loving and liking what you're doing in that space?
So I have a confession, and that is I've just started my own Snapchat account, and I'm obsessed with it. And I tell people all the time, like, have you tried Snapchat? And they're like, Brooke, we know what Snapchat is, but I've been snapping on my own, and I totally understand why people love it. It's a true storytelling platform, and it allows you to be creative. And so, one of my biggest priorities for the season is to really blow out our strategy for the platform, for the Nets, and for all three properties for that matter. So, we just had WWE SummerSlam at the arena over this past weekend, and we did a Snapchat story for SummerSlam and for Monday Night Raw. And, it was really great to see, fans, react and snap, send us snaps. And that was awesome. And about 2 weeks ago, we did a fan photo shoot at the team store for Nets fans, where we asked them to come, and we did a professional photo shoot, and we had some giveaways, and we did a whole Snapchat story around that, driving people to the store. And, we got a great reaction, and we've actually been putting our Snapchat stories on our YouTube pages, so people then can go check out, the full stories after the fact.
Well, that's the thing. They've got to realise what they're missing out on. I mean, that was my initial, I guess, and I can go back into my back catalogue of Sports Geek podcasts where I say Snapchat's no good. It doesn't have any ability to reach and go viral. And I stand by that at that time because it didn't have the Snapchat story component. And I completely agree with you. It's such a game changer because you can, check in, the next day and go, what was that game like at the, what was that Brooklyn Nets game like, or what was that Islanders game like, and get a completely different point of view, coverage of the game, access that is not on any other platform. And to me, that's the that's the killer piece for Snapchat. Once you start driving people in, how it gets shared and the virality of it is sort of, that's how people are using Snapchat. And I love hearing you saying, now I'm in and I'm using it, because you've got to, I keep tapping myself on the shoulder and say I've got to Snapchat more and to see what people are doing, but you've got to be using the tools to be able to know it. How you go about doing it. Now, it's got the same concerns as Instagram of you have to log in and log out of multiple accounts all the time.
Right.
Right. But that's the problem of working in brand and sports. You've got to do multiple. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing. I think that this next upcoming, both the NFL season, the NBA and NHL seasons. I think this is when Snapchat will get that real. A real bump from a point of view from the professional teams.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really easy to showcase your personality on Snapchat, and I encourage my team to always use the brand voice and the personality of the Nets and of the Islanders. So I think there's a lot of opportunity there, and to your point about having to toggle, back and forth between accounts. I mean, I'm thinking we have hopefully somebody dedicated to Snapchat every night, because I think in order to be successful on it, you can't be leaving Snapchat to go do something else. You gotta just focus on it, because really it is about just telling a story from start to finish, and providing people with that really immersive experience.
Yeah, and I think it really will. And it's a bit strange. It will compete with Twitter in that live experience and reporting of live. Like, I think Twitter reports live at the time, but I think Snapchat does a better job of telling the story of the day. So yeah, I think where it's going to excel and where you're seeing it excel at the minute is around big events. I can only imagine, some of the snaps that were coming out from SummerSlam as someone who went to WrestleMania at Levi Stadium. Like, it's a completely different point of view. And yeah, if you're not doing some sort of game day coverage, I think that's the place. I'm not a massive fan of, hey, it's training and now we've taken a snap of the training center. Like, that's not what Snapchat is. I think it is when there's live, when there's something exciting happening, that's when you can really activate your Snapchat channels, and then it can be resourced. It can be, like you just said, we need a game day producer for our Snapchat, and you can storyboard. This is what we want to do. If we want to do a point of view of the person who sets up the stadium, or we want to do a point of view of one of our ushers, or we want to do the point of view of one of our, locker room stewards, or we want to do a point of view of a bench player. There's so many things that you can provide that don't get, coverage, that doesn't need that high end, a video producer following them around, because they're expecting that slice of life type of storytelling.
Exactly. And that's what's so exciting about it, and for us, I mean, being able to connect with our younger audiences is important. And, this is where they are. I mean, when a bunch of our new players on the net side signed this summer, I asked them, what are your favorite social platforms? What are you guys using? And across the board, it was Snapchat, and, a little bit of Instagram as well. But so, it's a huge priority for us. We want to be, we want to fish where the fish are, not to say that, Facebook, all the, we're on them all, but this is important for us.
Oh, yeah, completely. And I do also, we've been talking to a few teams where people were worried about securing their name and that kind of thing. For mine, it's just get in. The amount of Snapchat names that are random, selections of, nowhere near on brand. No teams have got their names. I'm sure Snapchat as an organisation will sort of clean all that up eventually and go down the same process of verifying and all of that kind of stuff. But it's a matter of getting in there and start playing with that, playing in that space.
Yeah, and just shouting it out, across platforms. We're on Snapchat. This is, follow us. This is our name, But again, I think that's almost an expected, it's expected that your name probably won't be whatever the corporate name is across the board. And I see within the league, within the NBA anyway, a lot of the teams, have slightly different iterations of their names. So
we can follow, if I get this right, NBA Nets for the Nets on Snapchat and NY Isles for the Islanders?
Correct, yep.
So follow them on Snapchat and see what comes of the season ahead. Brooke, thank you very much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you for having me. This has been a great pleasure.
And where can people find you on the internet? What's the best way to get in touch with you?
Well, I'm on Twitter as This Is Brooke, and there's also my Instagram name. And funnily enough, This Is Brooke was taken on Snapchat, so it's This Is Brooke 1. Very, very creative, I know.
Terrific. So Brooke Eaton. I'll put a link in the show notes to your various channels, obviously on LinkedIn, Twitter, and the like. Thank you very much for coming on the podcast. Best of luck for the season ahead, and we look forward to seeing what Barclays Centre looks like in a sea of blue and orange when the NHL season kicks off.
Thank you, Sean, and please let me know next time you're going to be in New York. We'd love to have you back.
Cheers.
Sign up for Sports Geek News at sportsgeekhq.com/sign up now.
Thanks again to Brooke, aka This Is Brooke. That's Brooke with an E at the end, on Twitter. Please send Brooke a tweet. Tell her that you listened to the episode, but probably even better, send her a snap on This Is Brooke 1 on Snapchat. We did talk a little bit about Snapchat a little bit in the conversation. We actually talked a little bit off air. One of the analogies that I used at Seat is imagine if Ferris Bueller had Snapchat, because that storytelling element. And recently Ferris Bueller was actually on TV, and I actually ended up snapping the movie. I'll share a few of those pics, but I think it really does give you a good insight into the storytelling element that Snapchat offers. So you're on Snapchat. How are you using it? How are you measuring it? And again, that was a great question from Mark Cleary when I spoke to Brian Costello at the Timbers. How are you measuring whether it's working? It is obviously people tuning in and replying to the snaps and those kind of things, but it is something that does take a little bit of understanding, but also resourcing, giving someone the goals to develop that story around your game, because I think that's where Snapchat's really going to kill in a completely different game report. And also look into the geo filters. You can Snapchat aren't actually allowing a lot of brands to put geo filters on, but I think stadiums are getting a pretty good opportunity there to put specific filters around their stadium. So you can put a little, so your fans can use a bit of personality and put a bit of your team branding on the stadium and on their snaps from your stadium. So that's about it. Coming up to episode 100, please send me a tweet if you have been listening at Sean Callanan. I am really pushing to get a few more iTunes reviews in different parts of the world. So if you haven't left an iTunes review, please do so. If you go to sportsgeekhq.com/free ebook iTunes, funnily enough, if you leave an iTunes review, you'll get a free ebook. You'll also get a free ebook if you sign up for Sports Geek News, but that's beside the point. So please go to sportsgeekhq.com/iTunes. It should take you to the iTunes page. It should open up iTunes. It literally would take you 5 minutes. I would really appreciate it. And please send me an email that you've done it. One of the things that iTunes doesn't do very well is actually put people's names to their iTunes account. I think that's a real failing for Apple, and a real opportunity if they were able to get some real identity with what people are doing. Until next episode, my name is Sean Callanan from Sports Geek. As always, you can get me on Twitter, Instagram, and Snapchat, or the old school way, Sean at sportsgeekhq.com. Until next week, cheers.
Like the Sports Geek podcast? Find us on facebook.com/sportsgeek. Check out which teams work with Sports Geek at sportsgeekhq.com/clients. Please leave a review on iTunes. Go to sportsgeekhq.com/iTunes. Thanks for listening to the Sports Geek Podcast.